Hey, everybody, welcome back to TarHillIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Brandon P. Joining me from the Smith Center in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, is our very own publisher, Mr. Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we just watched North Carolina get his second win of this very young season, winning 90-68 over Lehigh. The Tar Heels were led by Armando Bacot and RJ Davis, who both had 22 points apiece. Armando Bacot had 20 rebounds, and he did it all in just 26 minutes. So, AJ, Armando and RJ did very Armando and RJ things. They didn't panic. They faced adversity. They acted like they were seniors, and they responded. So what did you think about their performance?
Well, just very good in general. I liked I think this team needed a game early where both of them being the returning guys, the guys who were in New Orleans, the guys who went through last year and have taken it upon themselves to make things different this year. I think they needed an early game where both of them just said, right on our shoulders, fellas. We're going to do RJ and Armando things, like you said, and that's what they got today. And it was impressive in a lot of ways. And I know people were ripping Armando for 5 of his offensive rebounds were his own misses, but that's what you get with Armando. I think we might see a little more explosiveness. It's kind of weird that perhaps he's getting used to playing with just one defender and nobody crashing down on him. It looked a couple times like he thought contact was coming, like another body was coming, and just missed a shot around the rim. So not making excuses for him, but I think that might be the case a little bit. And we'll see how that goes moving forward. But 22 and 20, we've seen him do this stuff before. So he did it early. I think it's good for the guys, the new guys, to see Armando be Armando. And just, by the way, it's Elliot Cadeau now working on a shot, right? And he's got a nice little rebounding machine. I should get a photo of it here in a minute and I'll tweet it out. But it's a cool little contraption right there. So, and Elliot saw that. It's good for Elliot to see dumping it Armando. He's going to score. It's good for Elliot to see that RJ off the dribble, RJ on the catch and shoot, RJ getting into the lane. There are a lot of things in his bag, and he showed a lot of those things tonight. So it's good for Harrison Ingram to see. It's good for Cormac Ryan, who's been on the other end of it a lot. It's good for him to see it and be on the right end of that this time. Same thing with Jalen Withers. And I just think that that's good. I thought there were a lot of healthy things in this game. I thought there were some things to pick at with the Tar Heels. We can get into a little bit of that later on here in the three things. But, man, it's cool. November, what is this, the 12th? November 12th, you got 22 from RJ, 22 from Armando, and they're able to pull away and get a win. And it's a different team. It's a different looking team. RJ and Armando last year when they both go 22, it was often when another couple of guys were having really tough nights. That wasn't the case tonight. It wasn't tough nights. They scored 90 points while hitting 5 threes. It's a different team. So Armando and RJ were able to go 22 and 22 each, and it didn't look like they were occupying way too much of the ball. So we're seeing glimpses of the new look Tar Heels, and I think that's one of them. So when RJ and Armando are doing those kinds of things, and it's not like it's completely the RJ and Armando show, that's the intent, that means it's a good basketball team that's going to get a lot better. And the other guys are going to fill in around them and do good things as well. And they got 14, like I said, from Harrison. So if Harrison's that third guy, and I think he's the third guy, and he's giving you 14 and 7, and he's doing a variety of things he did, and he's enough that teams have to guard him, so Armando's getting a lot of ISO situations, then things are going to play out really well for this team over the course of the season.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I think this early in the season with this much newness on the team, it's important for this team to establish an identity. Like, who are they going to go to in adverse situations? And I think today was just step one of, like, creating a pecking order of, like, when things get down to the crunch, this is what we're going to do. And today, UNC, they faced a lot of adversity. Lehigh just would not go away. They were making tough shots. At one point in the second half, they got it down to 53-50, but UNC responded to a 24-6 run. That was a very key moment in the game. What did you think about the Tar Heels' response right there?
The thing that most impressed me about it, and I asked Hubert and I asked a couple of the players, the returning players, I asked RJ, Seth Trimble, and Armando, you guys showed no stress, no panic. There was no stress. 53-50. And last year in those situations early, like the Gardner-Webb game, you could see the team just tighten up. They were stressed. They were tight. They weren't having any fun. There was nothing loose. There was nothing free about them. And that was completely different today. Now, one of the reasons, as Armando said, look, there's a lot of new guys out there. They didn't go through that last year. So they're just playing ball, and they're relishing the opportunity to be in this environment on this stage. Even the ones that played on big stages before, this is a different animal here. And they didn't have the pressure of last year. Seth actually was the one who pointed that out first, made a great point saying, look, last year's team, there was a lot of stress, a lot of pressure to live up to that billing. And they put a lot of it on themselves. So it wasn't just the outside world putting that on them. They did it themselves. And I really think the way that they went about it tonight was a team that is stress-free, a team that is pressure-free, a team that is loose and free. And because of that, there's like all this room to grow. They're not being squelched. I actually used the word squelched when I asked Seth about it, and he agreed immediately. I said, last year's team just felt squelched. They felt like they tied themselves into a little space, and it was difficult for them to get out. And anytime that space was threatened, they just didn't handle it very well much of the time. Tonight, I mean, the space is the size of this arena. So they're free. They're loose. There's no pressure. They defended. They made stops, and then they made baskets. And to be honest with you, I didn't feel like I didn't get the vibe that the energy was different when it was becoming 53-50 than when it was 24-6 run. That's a good thing because stuff happens. Guys make shots. I was talking to someone sitting next to me that one of the things I love about college basketball this time of year and have throughout my many years covering a lot of teams is that you get to see a lot of these schools from the Patriot League and the Northeast Conference and SWAC, and they've got dudes who can play, man. They got dudes who can play. You know, Paxton Wojcik was at Brown last year. Now he's starting at North Carolina. They got dudes who can play. So dudes who can play hit shots. And they made a nice little stretch there. And they were a little bit of a challenge for Carolina defensively, which we'll get into in just a minute. So I love how they handled that. I think that was great for this team to get another moment where they're put in a situation to panic and stress, and they didn't. Radford did it, and now Lehigh did. Now you don't want it to happen all the time with these teams. I don't think you really want to look at them early in the second half and have a 2-point game with Cal Riverside on Friday night, because that would be a trend. And they need to not have that trend. They need to avoid that trend, Brandon. But the first two games in with so much newness, I think that this was actually, if you could prescribe it without publicly saying we need to be pushed by this team, I think it worked out really well. I don't have any problem with how all that transpired.
Yeah, and to be fair to Lehigh and Radford, they both were picked. They were both to finish second in their league. So it's very possible that UNC just beat two NCAA teams. Like, you never know. And the reason why. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, I was interrupting you, but Patriot League wins games in a tournament every once in a while. It's a good league. Yeah. It's a very competitive league. Yeah, Bucknell, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I interrupted you, so go ahead.
I was gonna say, one of the reasons the game got to 53-50 and it was so close and UNC faced all this adversity was the fact that the offense that Lehigh ran was just so much different than the offense that Radford ran. Tar Heels they eventually made the adjustments, but what's the value can that bring to the Tar Heels in the future?
Because I think one of the things that can give a team trouble is facing a patient offense, and an offense that, when I asked Hubert tonight, he said, look, they could flash anything at you at any time. Like, they are a read and react offense. And I love read and react offenses. Some people give UVA a hard time about the way they play, but when they're doing it right, it's actually a fun way to look at the game, because there are a lot of different ways to score baskets and get good shots. And what Lehigh was doing tonight was they were running a lot of screens. They were running off screens. They were doing there was a lot of valuable movement in what they did, especially with their bigs, that there were times the bigs popped out and they got shooting drill threes. They were shooting drill threes. It's a big out there. He gets the ball. They sat a little bit. You could see why they're not Big East or ACC or Big Ten guys, because they're maybe not as athletic, but they still have some skill, and they made some of those shots. And to their credit, they stuck to what they were doing. They called a couple of timeouts to get reorganized. They stuck to what they were doing, and because of that, even when Carolina went up big, or they went 50 in the first half, I think that Carolina got a lot out of it. if you're in a situation, and anybody that played like high school football, for example, when you have those early season scrimmages as round robins, you might say to a coach, hey, play some zone coverage or something like that, or you do it in basketball. Hey, give us a full court press. We need to work on that if you're helping each other out. This is one of those games where if you would have said, okay, this is the way Radford plays. We need to deal with guards. We need to deal with switching on guards and our bigs getting on guards, helping out guards who are going to get into the lane and shoot pull-up jumpers or get to the rim. Now, in this game, it's a completely different approach, which is why Carolina's defense approach looked totally different than it did Monday night. It took them a while to adjust. They had a rough period there in the second half when it got to 53-50, but they clamped down. So when you make in-game adjustments and you're able to go on a 24-6 run against anybody, especially this time of year, I think that's all good stuff. Now, some people are going to pick at it and say, well, they should never be up only 3 against Lehigh with 13.5 minutes left. I get that. Tell me that in January and I listen.
Yeah.
It's November 12th. This is an absolute process with a capital P. Get all these parts coming in, and they've been pressured a couple of times. They've been put in some situations that better teams like Michigan State against JMU may not handle very well, but they handled it well. And they ended up pulling away on both occasions. So I think those are really good signs. So defensively, they probably won't grade out real well, but they'll get bonus points for how they adjusted late and went on that run, because runs are not just about scoring points. Runs begin with stops. Every basketball coach at any level who's worth his salt will tell you runs begin with getting stops, and then you score on top of getting stops. Therefore, it becomes a run. So they did both. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Friday night to see what the next layer is, and then they go to the Bahamas and it gets real, man. Northern Iowa is going to be better than the first couple of teams they faced. It's going to be longer, thicker, 6-7 dudes shooting probably. It's what Northern Iowa's always been. And then they got some big-time teams that they're going to play. So I think these were healthy games to play as they creep toward a stretch that's going to be extremely challenging.
I think this game particularly and the game against Radford was also good for UNC, because I think they had games like this last year, but last year I don't think they created enough space between the opponents to get some younger guys in get some younger guys in the game and get more minutes. And I think these first 2 games, especially, Hubert Davis has been able to use his bench. And so the younger guys have been able to see different things, not just the starters. I think overall is good for the whole team.
Yeah. Aside from Okonkwo,
great job.
The other 10 scholarship guys played in the first half, and they all played in the second half before the game got somewhat lopsided. So everyone was in. Everyone was in by the 10-minute mark in the second half, or 11-minute mark in the second half. So, or 9-minute mark, 11 minutes in rather. So that's a good sign. Hubert's getting those guys in. Kind of curious with some of the minutes with a few guys. Jalen Washington was among the first subs with Elliot Cadeau coming off. He played 3 minutes. We didn't see him again until the 10-minute mark. He went 23 game minutes without getting on the floor, but then he was on for 5 or 6 minutes as maybe the tail end, the back end of that 24-6 run. So he was on the floor when good things were happening. So again, that's going to take time too. There's so many things about this that are going to take time, and that's part of the equation. There are going to be some nights where Jalen Withers makes a lot more sense for 20 minutes, and some nights maybe where going small. And it's Paxton Wojcik getting some of those minutes. Paxton didn't play a whole lot tonight. He was still wearing the headband, and I didn't see him after the game to see how big the gash was, but still wearing it. So obviously it's affecting him some. But nothing but positives. I mean, anyone who wants to pick at this stuff right now, you're wasting time, you're wasting energy. Let the stuff play out. If you want to pick, we can pick in a month.
Yeah,
we'll pick in a month.
I think that's an excellent place to stop. For TarHeelIllustrated.com, I'm Brandon P. He's Andrew Jones. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.